Well, chain restaurants used to dominate around the country. They were a fun place to grab a meal at an affordable price.
Yeah, but recently many are struggling, even going out of business, as Arthur Chan reports. Inflation, high labor costs, and changing tastes are...
Right now, while you watch this, a fast food chain you grew up eating at is quietly pulling the plug on locations in your state. No press conference, no farewell tour, just a sign in the window and a corporate memo nobody outside the boardroom ever sees. We pulled the closure filings, the bankruptcy documents, and the franchise disclosures. 13 chains are terminating restaurants right now, and some of these names will genuinely shock you. Let's go. Number 13. Red Lobster. Red Lobster's collapse is the closure story everyone half remembers and almost nobody actually understands. The company filed for bankruptcy in May 2024 after the endless shrimp promotion reportedly cost it $11 million in a single quarter, an unforced error that exposed a business already bleeding from years of declining traffic. The restructuring that followed wasn't gentle. Over 100 locations were liquidated within months, with auctioneers selling off everything down to the lobster tanks. A former server in Orlando watching her location's final days told a local reporter, "We sold the booths. We sold the menus. It felt like a funeral with a price tag on everything." The deeper problem was never really the shrimp. It was a brand that had spent years raising prices on lobster tails and seafood platters while quietly losing the customers who used to treat Red Lobster as an affordable celebration dinner. By the time the bankruptcy hit, those customers had already left for other restaurants, and the endless shrimp promotion was a desperate attempt to win them back with volume instead of value. The supply chain side of the story compounds the problem. Red Lobster had spent years sourcing seafood through industrial suppliers in Southeast Asia and South America to hit aggressive cost targets, a decision that kept menu prices from climbing even higher. But that also meant the company had little room left to absorb a promotional miscalculation of the shrimp deal's scale. When the math broke, there was no cushion left anywhere in the business to catch it. A new ownership group has kept a reduced footprint alive into 2026, but the brand operating today is a fraction of what existed 2 years ago. Whole regions of the country no longer have a Red Lobster within driving distance, and the locations that remain are concentrated almost entirely in markets where the brand still carries enough nostalgia to draw a crowd on weekends. But Red Lobster's closures came with headlines and a national news cycle. What's happening at number 12 is just as severe, and almost nobody outside the affected communities has noticed. Number 12. Rubio's Coastal Grill. Rubio's built its identity as the original fish taco chain, a genuinely distinct niche in a fast food landscape dominated by burgers and burritos. That distinctiveness wasn't enough to save it. The California-based chain filed for bankruptcy twice in recent years, first in 2020 and again in 2024, with the second filing proving fatal. In June 2024, Rubio's abruptly closed 48 locations across California in a single announcement, laying off hundreds of employees with almost no public notice. Some employees reportedly learned their store was closing only when they arrived for a shift and found the doors locked. One former general manager posted on social media, 13 years at that location, found out it was over from a text. The chain's struggles trace back to a familiar combination: rising labor costs in California, increased minimum wage requirements specific to fast food workers under state legislation, and a customer base that had options. Rubio's couldn't outcompete on price or convenience. The seafood-forward menu, once a genuine differentiator, became a liability as ingredient costs climbed faster than the chain could pass along to customers without losing them entirely. The timing made it worse. California's fast food minimum wage increase took effect in April 2024, just 2 months before the closures, and franchise operators across the state have pointed to that specific policy shift as the final pressure point that made marginal locations unsustainable. A former Rubio's operations manager described the math bluntly in an industry forum post. "We were already running thin margins on fish, add a wage increase on top of that, and there was nothing left to cut." Hit the like button right now if you had no idea any of this was happening, because the next entry is even more abrupt, and it happened almost overnight. Number 11. Burgerville. Burgerville is a beloved regional chain in the Pacific Northwest, the kind of brand locals defend fiercely against any comparison to national fast food. In 2025, that loyalty wasn't enough. The company announced a sweeping reduction of its footprint, closing multiple locations across Oregon and Washington as part of what executives described as a necessary restructuring to keep the remaining stores viable. The closures hit longtime customers hard, particularly in smaller towns where the local Burgerville functioned as a genuine community gathering spot, not just a drive-through. A regular customer in Vancouver, Washington, wrote in a local Facebook group that parking lot was where half my kids' soccer team celebrated wins. Now, it's just empty. The sentiment captured something the corporate closure announcement never could. These locations weren't just transactions, they were neighborhood fixtures, and their disappearance left a visible gap. Burgerville's struggles stem from rising regional labor costs, increased competition from national chains expanding aggressively into Pacific Northwest markets, and a supply chain built around local and sustainable sourcing that, while genuinely differentiating, comes at a cost structure that's harder to sustain at smaller scale than the commodity sourcing model national chains rely on. The chain has long paid above-average wages and offered benefits unusual for fast food, commitments that build genuine employee loyalty, but also left less room to absorb the broader cost pressures hitting the entire industry at once. What happened at number 10 involves a brand so large that its closures barely register as news anymore, which is exactly the problem. Number 10. Subway. Subway has been closing stores so consistently for so many years that the closures have stopped being news. Even as the cumulative number has become staggering, the chain closed over 1,000 locations in the United States in 2023 alone, continuing a trend that has persisted into 2025 and 2026. Franchises have been increasingly vocal about the economics simply not working. High royalty fees, aggressive promotional pricing mandated by corporate that eats into already thin margins, and a brand identity that hasn't kept pace with how quickly the fast casual sandwich market evolved around it. One franchise owner in Indiana who closed 2 locations in 2024 said bluntly, "Corporate wants me to sell a $5 footlong that costs me $4 to make. That math doesn't work twice." The $5 footlong, once Subway's most powerful marketing asset, has become a kind of historical artifact. Footlongs now regularly price above $12 in many markets, and the gap between that number and the brand's enduring cultural memory of $5 creates a credibility problem no promotion is fixed. Subway's parent company has acknowledged the oversaturation problem publicly, admitting that the chain expanded too aggressively in previous decades, placing locations within blocks of each other in ways that made individual store economics nearly impossible to sustain. In some major metro areas, internal franchise data has shown 2 or 3 Subway locations competing for the exact same customer base within a single square mile, a self-inflicted wound that no marketing campaign could fix. The closures underway now are in part corporate, finally admitting that mistake. But Subway's decline has been slow and grinding. What's happening at number 9 is sudden, and it's happening to a brand most people assumed was untouchable. Number 9. TGI Fridays. TGI Fridays filed for bankruptcy in November 2024, a collapse that had been building for years, but still managed to shock an industry that watched it happen. The bankruptcy filing came after the company had already closed dozens of underperforming locations throughout 2023 and 2024, with more closures following the filing itself. By early 2025, the chain that once defined American casual dining for an entire generation had shrunk to a footprint that would have been unrecognizable a decade earlier. A longtime server in New Jersey, whose location closed in December 2024, told a local news outlet, "I trained half the staff at that restaurant, watched them walk out for the last time with their aprons in a box." The TGI Fridays collapse illustrates a pattern repeating across casual dining. A brand that raised prices significantly while simultaneously cutting portion sizes and reducing the complimentary extras customers had come to expect, creating a value perception gap that customers noticed immediately, even if executives didn't. The bankruptcy restructuring has kept a reduced number of corporate and franchise locations operating into 2026, but industry analysts widely expect further closures as the company works through its reorganization plan. Several franchise groups holding TGI Fridays locations have separately filed for bankruptcy protection of their own since the parent company's filing, suggesting the contraction has not yet found a floor. What happened at number 8 involves a chain that tried to fight back against its own decline with a strategy that backfired spectacularly. Number 8. Buca di Beppo. Buca di Beppo, the family-style Italian chain known for oversized portions and kitschy decor, filed for bankruptcy in August 2024, immediately closing 17 locations as part of the filing. The closures hit particularly hard because Buca di Beppo had built a specific reputation around celebration, dining, birthdays, graduations, family reunions, built entirely around the chain's massive shareable platters. When locations started closing, entire communities lost the one restaurant built specifically for group celebrations at an accessible price point. A regular customer in Chicago, reacting to her local closure, wrote online, "Every single birthday in my family happened at that Buca. My kids don't know another place like it exists." The company's struggles reflect a broader casual dining problem. The family-style, oversized portion model that worked well for decades became increasingly difficult to sustain as food costs rose and customer dining habits shifted towards smaller, more frequent visits rather than the big group occasions Buca di Beppo was built around. The pandemic had already weakened group dining patterns, and they never fully recovered. The bankruptcy filing allowed a sale of the brand to a new ownership group, but the closures that came with the transition eliminated a meaningful portion of the chain's national footprint permanently. Several of the closed locations had operated continuously for over 2 decades, meaning the closures didn't just eliminate restaurants. They eliminated some of the longest-standing leases and most established staff tenures anywhere in the casual dining sector. The chain at number 7 made a pricing decision so badly received that the backlash alone may have accelerated its closures. Subscribe to this channel right now if you want to know exactly which chain is shutting its doors near you next, because the next 5 entries include some of the most recognizable names in American fast food. Number 7. Wendy's. Wendy's isn't filing for bankruptcy. It's not collapsing in the way TGI Fridays or Red Lobster did. But the chain has been quietly closing underperforming locations throughout 2024, 2025, and into 2026, and the controversy that's followed, it has made every closure decision a public relations problem the company didn't anticipate. The dynamic pricing announcement in early 2024, which Wendy's framed as digital menu boards offering discounts during off-peak hours, but which the public immediately understood as surge pricing, generated a backlash that hurt foot traffic in ways the company is still managing. A franchise owner in Texas, speaking anonymously to a trade publication, said, "Corporate created a PR disaster and we're the ones watching customers walk past the drive-thru." Wendy's has confirmed dozens of location closures across multiple states as part of what it describes as routine portfolio optimization. But franchisees report that softening traffic following the pricing controversy has made several previously borderline locations newly unviable. The closures aren't catastrophic in scale compared to other entries on this list, but they represent a chain that for the first time in years is contracting rather than expanding. Franchise associations have reportedly requested additional marketing support from corporate to rebuild trust in affected markets, a request that, as of early 2026, has not been fully addressed. The chain at number 6 closed faster and more completely than almost anything else on this list, and most Americans still don't know it happened. Number 6. Boston Market. Boston Market went from over 450 locations at its peak to fewer than 30 by 2024, one of the most dramatic collapses in American fast food history. And it happened with almost no media coverage relative to its scale. Multiple state health departments and labor agencies cited the chain for unpaid wages, unsanitary conditions, and outright store abandonment, where locations simply stopped operating without any formal closure announcement. Employees in several states reported showing up for shifts at locations that had been closed overnight, lights off, doors locked, with no communication from corporate. One former employee in New Jersey described it starkly. "We didn't get fired. The restaurant just disappeared." The company's decline traces back to ownership changes, mounting debt, and a fundamental failure to modernize a menu and brand identity that had grown stale relative to faster, cheaper, more convenient competitors. Boston Market's rotisserie chicken concept, once genuinely novel, became surrounded by competitors offering similar or better quality at lower prices and faster service. State labor departments in New Jersey and California separately pursued the company for hundreds of thousands of dollars in unpaid wage claims, a legal pressure that compounded the operational collapse and made it nearly impossible for the brand to secure the financing it would have needed to stabilize. By 2025, the brand that once defined a specific category of American comfort food had become a cautionary tale that business schools will study for the wrong reasons. What's happening at number 5 involves a brand with deep cultural significance, and its closures carry a weight the other entries on this list don't. Number 5. Sizzler. Sizzler, the steakhouse buffet chain that defined affordable family dining for generations of Americans, has been quietly disappearing for years, and the pace accelerated through 2024 and 2025. The chain, filed for bankruptcy in 2020, emerged from that restructuring with a significantly reduced footprint and has continued closing additional locations in the years since, as the surviving stores struggle with rising food costs that hit a buffet format restaurant harder than almost any other dining model. A longtime customer in Southern California, reflecting on her closed local Sizzler, wrote, "My grandparents took me there. I took my kids there. There's nowhere left to take my grandkids." The buffet model itself has become a structural liability in the post-pandemic dining environment. Health-conscious dining trends, combined with persistent customer hesitancy around shared serving stations that lingered well beyond the acute pandemic period, never fully recovered for buffet format restaurants industry-wide. Sizzler, more dependent on the buffet concept than almost any competitor, absorbed that damage disproportionately. What remains of the chain operates primarily in a handful of West Coast markets, a shadow of the national footprint it once held. Industry analysts, tracking the casual buffet category broadly, have noted that Sizzler's contraction mirrors a wider collapse across the entire format, with multiple comparable chains shrinking by similar margins over the same period. The chain at number 4 is closing stores, not because it's failing, but because of something happening at the corporate level that most customers have no visibility into. Number 4, Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut isn't bankrupt. It's not collapsing, but the chain has closed hundreds of dine-in locations across the United States over the past several years, part of a deliberate corporate strategy to shift the brand toward delivery and carry-out formats that require far less real estate and labor overhead. The dine-in Pizza Hut, with its red roof and salad bar, the format that an entire generation of Americans associates with childhood birthday parties, has been steadily phased out in favor of smaller delivery and carry-out footprints. Parent company, Yum! Brands, has confirmed the strategic shift publicly, framing it as modernization rather than decline. A former Pizza Hut server in Pennsylvania, whose dine-in location closed in 2024, put it more bluntly in an online forum post. "They didn't fail, they just decided dine-in wasn't worth it anymore." Same thing for us, though. The economics behind the shift are straightforward. A full-service dine-in restaurant requires significantly more staff, more square footage, and more overhead than a delivery-focused location serving the same geographic area. As delivery apps and direct online ordering have come to dominate how customers actually order pizza, the dine-in format has become an expensive legacy structure that doesn't match how people order anymore. The financial logic is compelling on paper. A delivery-only footprint costs a fraction to operate and can serve the same delivery radius, but it has produced a quieter cultural cost that doesn't show up in any earnings report. For customers who grew up celebrating birthdays in a Pizza Hut booth, the closures represent something the corporate strategy documents never capture: an entire category of childhood memory being quietly retired. The chain at number 3 is closing stores for reasons that have nothing to do with food and everything to do with where Americans are choosing to live. Number 3, Denny's has closed hundreds of locations over the past several years, with the pace continuing through 2025 and into 2026. And the explanation is more complicated than simple financial failure. The chain's core customer base and store footprint were built around highway corridors, suburban strip development, and the specific late-night, all-hours dining pattern that defined American road trip and shift worker culture for. As that pattern has shifted, fewer late-night diners, changing work schedules, more delivery and convenience options. Denny's locations built around the old pattern have become structurally unviable even in markets where the brand itself remains popular. The company has also raised menu prices significantly since 2022, with a basic breakfast combo now regularly exceeding $14 in many markets, eroding the affordability that once defined the Grand Slam and the brand's entire value proposition. A regular customer in rural Ohio, reacting to his local closure, wrote, "Used to stop there every Sunday after church. Now I'd have to drive 40 minutes for the same eggs that don't even taste like they used to." Denny's executives have acknowledged publicly that the company is actively evaluating its real estate portfolio for further closures, particularly in markets where customer traffic patterns no longer support the cost of operating a 24-hour diner format. Several locations have already quietly scaled back to limited overnight hours, rather than full 24-hour service, a middle step that often precedes a permanent closure announcement once the reduced hours fail to stabilize the location's numbers. The chain at number 2 is closing stores at a scale that has genuinely alarmed franchisees who built their entire livelihoods around the brand. Number 2, Applebee's parent company has confirmed dozens of location closures across multiple states through 2024 and into 2025, with franchisees publicly warning that more are likely as same-store sales continue to decline. The chain's signature 2 for $20 deal, once a genuine traffic driver and a defining piece of the brand's value identity, has been quietly retired in many markets and replaced with pricing that puts the same meal closer to $32. Customers who built dining habits around that specific promotion felt the change acutely, and traffic data through 2025 shows they largely didn't accept the new pricing. A multi-unit Applebee's franchisee in the Midwest, speaking to a restaurant trade publication, said, "I signed up for a value brand. I'm now operating a mid-tier sit-down restaurant with mid-tier sit-down restaurant problems and none of the upside." The company launched a public value-focused marketing campaign in late 2025, attempting to reverse the trend. But the campaign has generated more media attention than measurable traffic recovery. Several franchise groups have publicly stated they're reassessing the viability of multiple locations heading into 2026, suggesting the closures confirmed so far may represent only the early phase of a larger contraction. Some franchisees have begun converting underperforming Applebee's locations to other brands within their portfolios entirely, a quiet signal that confidence in the brand's recovery has worn thin, even among operators with the most at stake. What's happening at number 1 involves the most recognizable fast food brand in America, and the scale of what's unfolding there dwarfs everything else on this list combined. Hit the like button right now if any of these closures have hit a restaurant you actually grew up going to. Because what's happening at number 1 is the biggest closure story in fast food right now, and almost nobody is talking about it the way they should be. Number 1, McDonald's. McDonald's isn't bankrupt, it's not in crisis in any conventional sense, but buried in franchise disclosure documents and corporate real estate filings is a closure pattern that, in raw numbers, exceeds every other entry on this list combined. And it's been happening quietly enough that most customers have no idea it's underway. McDonald's has closed several hundred underperforming U.S. locations over the past 2 years as part of what the company describes internally as portfolio optimization, a process of identifying locations that no longer generate sufficient returns relative to their real estate and operating costs and exiting those leases rather than renewing them. The closures are concentrated in specific categories: standalone locations in declining suburban retail corridors, older format restaurants that would require expensive renovations to meet current brand standards, and locations clustered too closely to newer, better performing restaurants nearby. The 2024 viral moment when a customer posted a receipt showing a Big Mac combo priced near $19 in a Connecticut location did real damage to the brand's value perception nationally, even though that specific price point wasn't representative of most markets. The backlash forced McDonald's into a defensive $5 value meal promotion that generated headlines but only a temporary traffic bump. A McDonald's franchisee in the Northeast, speaking candidly to an industry publication, said corporates spent a fortune convincing people we're still the value brand. Meanwhile, they're quietly letting leases expire on stores that can't prove it. What makes McDonald's closures different from every other entry on this list is the scale of what's being optimized away versus what's being reinvested. The company continues opening new locations in higher growth markets even as it closes underperforming ones elsewhere, meaning the net store count hasn't collapsed the way Subway's or Boston Market's has. The strategy is, in corporate terms, working exactly as designed. Weaker locations close, stronger ones open, and the balance sheet looks healthy throughout. But for the specific communities losing their local McDonald's, often older suburban neighborhoods that have seen population decline or demographic shifts, the closure represents the same loss every other entry on this list represents: a fixture of daily life quietly gone, with no replacement planned for that side of town. McDonald's scale means its closures don't generate the same panic headlines as a TGI Fridays, bankruptcy, or a Red Lobster liquidation, but the company restructuring its U.S. footprint while simultaneously fighting a value perception crisis is, in its own way, the most significant story on this entire list. It's the chain everyone assumed was permanent, quietly proving that nothing in American fast food actually is. Thanks for watching. If any of these closures hit close to home, let us know in the comments which restaurant you missed the most. Want to see which fast food chains are actually opening hundreds of new locations while everyone else shrinks? Click on the left. And if you don't want to miss the next investigation into what's really happening to American restaurants, hit that subscribe button right now.